So how's it going, guys? This is Ryo Murata, photographer based in Tokyo. So I thought it would be nice to talk about Marumi's Exus Protector Filter Mark II, actually. So interesting story. Where should I start? I think one of the accessories that I use the longest is actually sort of like a filter from Marumi. And because a lot of my subscribers, a lot of my viewers are actually located outside of Japan, I thought it would be nice to sort of like mention them on my channel. And as a career, as a photographer, as an artist, and also a content creator, Marumi's filters is, how should I say, basically Marumi is a company based in Nagano, Japan, Nagano Prefecture, Japan, a really nice location actually, which I've never been to, but they actually specialize in filters such as ND filter, neutral density filters, CPL filters, circular polarizer filters, and along with protector filters. In addition to that, they make specialized filters for starscape, starburst type effects, and special effects filters that emulate film-like sort of like simulations by physically attaching a filter onto the front of the lens. There's like so many that it's going to be impossible for me to sort of like say every single one of them, but in this video I just wanted to talk about the Marumi's Exus Protector Mark II, which I've been using for so long, and I thought it would be nice to mention it on my channel. And ever since I purchased my GW690, Fuji GW690, I had this filter on that lens, on that camera, for more than 3 years, more than 4 years actually, and I thought it would be really nice to like mention it. And probably because a lot of people who watch my YouTube channel are new to photography, it'd be nice to sort of like explain from zero as for educational purposes. And basically what a protector filter does is as the name implies, it basically protects the filter, not the filter, the lens, from outer effects such as dust and water and rain and stuff like that. And mostly they're like screw-in types of filters, so you can basically, depending on or any kind of like lens that you purchase, on the front of the barrel of the lens there should be a 2-digit number, like 67mm for the GW690. I use Fujifilm's 23mm f2 to record this video, which uses a 43mm thread. If you purchase the exact same thread on the filter, when you purchase a filter, there's a sort of like a number there, 43mm, 67mm. You can basically, if you purchase the exact same version, you can basically screw it onto the camera and you're basically good to go. But typically speaking, the protector filters have negligible effect on overall image quality, but there is a but. Number one is that if you use a super wide angle lens, which I never use, you will get ghosting artifacts and some kind of like flare going on, because typically, if you guys ever used a wide angle lens typically have the front element sort of like concave or I don't know what you call it, but it's like protruding out in the center, and on the outside it basically curves inwards, meaning that when you put sort of like a filter in front of that, light can bounce in between that sort of like space between the lens element and the filter itself, and you will get some kind of artifacts and ghosting and stuff like that, which would overall decrease the sort of like resolutions. So when you're using super like wide angle lenses, I would never use a filter. And also, in addition to that, another but is that if you use a super cheap filter, protector filter, you will get worse quality images due to the fact that, typically speaking, the cheaper filters use obviously cheaper material, which basically transmit towards the sensor or maybe the film negative emulsion of that camera, and you will get flares or some kind of ghosting going on if you use a really cheap filter. However, what's interesting is on Marumi's website, they have this comparison of what would happen if you use a cheap multi-coat sort of like filter in front of the lens element in exact same location, exact same shot. They did a comparison of a cheap filter and also comparing that with their product lineup, which is their Exus Lens Protect Mark II, and also one rank higher than that, they have a Prime Lens Protect filter, and it clearly shows that if you use a higher quality sort of like filter, you can basically decrease that artifact that remains in that image, whether or not if it's digital or film. So the main reason why I use protector filters is typically, as the name implies, you can basically protect your lens if you drop it, which I never do, or you can basically protect the front element of that lens from outer sort of like dust and water and rain and stuff like that. And because Japan is sort of like inching towards Guam, we have these frequently what you call rains that might happen, and the weather forecast kind of BS's and kind of like sort of like tells us a lie that it won't rain, but typically it will rain. So in those cases, I typically put a protector like filter on my lens, and honestly, like, it's better to be protected than not be protected. I mean, that doesn't make any sense for some people, but it's like interesting to note that in the course of the years, it's been raining a lot in Japan actually, and there's a lot of like disasters going on, so it's best to be like protected. And as of like 2023, Marumi has like 5 protector filters on their website, actually on their like lineup. The entry level, they have something called the DHG series. I'm gonna elaborate on that. And one rank above the DHG entry level like filter is the Exus Mark II, which is their best selling protector filter, which a lot of photographers actually use. And not being like super specific, but like I said, the Exus Protector Mark II has a reflection rate of 0.2%, and also it can prevent static electricity from happening. So that's basically, if the protector filter doesn't have that, it can pick up dust or kind of like sand and stuff like that when you're like shooting outdoors. And also they do have a water repellent kind of like functionality, which repels a lot of water actually. So during the rainy seasons, that will help a lot of people, because typically if you purchase a cheap sort of like protector filters, what happens is that water particles will like stick onto the front element of that protector filter, and you get a really sort of like dizzy like image. But if it has water repellent kind of functionality, if you shake it off, if you shake it off, the water particle will like fall off from the lens element, not the lens element, but the filter element, and you can basically continue shooting. That's something essential if you're shooting outside. And above that, they recently released something called Solid, which is has the exactly same aspects, characteristics as the Exus Mark II, Protector Mark II, but they added 7 times more durability to the filter itself. So I don't know how people are gonna abuse that, but which means that you can basically slam that filter against the what I call the table, the side of the table, and it won't crack. During CP Plus, the one of the person who was salesperson was actually slamming it against the edge of the table, and it did not crack. So it can feel the abuse, but it won't crack. And if you want that, they have a higher like quality filter for that, which is the Solid. And on the opposite end of the filter spectrum from the Solid, they have something called the Prime, which is, I don't know why they named it Prime, but this one in particular, although it doesn't have that extra durability as a Solid, it has less reflection rate than the Exus Mark II. And by far, I think Marumi's overall history of making filters, this Prime series actually sort of like reflects the least amount of like light actually at 0.1%. And they say that it is the closest that you can get an overall total resolution without a filter. And although it is like really expensive for people who can afford it, going back onto topic, honestly, like this will really depend on the person. But because I use a GW690 camera, which you guys probably know is a fixed lens attached to the camera body itself, if you damage the lens itself, you basically have to replace the whole camera system. The camera and lens, it's forever stuck like glue. And typically speaking, typical like SLRs or typical cameras, you can basically remove the lens from the camera itself. So if you damage the lens, you can basically purchase a new lens and then basically swap that onto the camera of the body, such as a Nikon F3 and stuff like that. But because due to the fact that these what I call film cameras are not being sort of like manufactured anymore. They're getting much more expensive, much more expensive to fix, to get it sort of like maintenance. And at the same time, it's, I guess, sort of like a noteworthy investment to make in these sort of like protector filters, because if you damage that lens 100%, you can't get it fixed. There are no people who can like fix the lens elements itself, because those materials are basically obsolete. So it might be a wise choice to have some kind of protector filter in front of that camera lens, especially for film cameras. So yeah, that's basically my coverage on Marumi's protector filter, Exus Mark II actually, which I've always have it 100% on my GW690, and it's not going anywhere. It's not gonna fall out because it's already attached to my camera 100% of the time. So yeah, so that's basically it on my coverage on Marumi Kogi's Exus protector filter Mark II. If you have any questions or any inquiries, I'm happy to reply. And yeah, I'm just curious, do you guys use protector filters when you're shooting with a film camera? And I should have mentioned, for digital, I actually don't use it, because digital cameras have far more resolutions and it becomes a little bit apparent if you use a protector filter. But because also I'm not an outdoor hiker or I never climb mountains and stuff like that, I never use protector filters in that regards. But for my GW690, I have it on 100%. So yeah, I'm curious how you guys use protector filters. So yeah, we will see you next time. Peace out. Pooh.